gosh, I don't know if I have much more to say. You've been at Mozilla. You currently reside in Washington, D.C. Nation's capital, making hopefully our nation a little bit more playful. God, we could use it. And took the train on over here to be with us today. I'm really excited to hear from what Chloe's been up to since Oikos. Is that the name of your thesis?
You remember all of
I know. Steel traps. Google. And is here today to share what she's been up to.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chloe.
Thank you.
Yeah, we also have to do the laptop situation.
I want to do something. It's not. Actually, before we start, here, you guys have been sitting for so long, you probably haven't slept and are so stressed out. Stand up.
Yes.
I play a game I play with my 2-year-old daughter. So just like shake 5 hands, this 5 times this hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Leg, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another leg, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All together now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Close your eyes. Now turn to the next person next to you and tell them they're amazing. It works. It works. So, hi everyone, my name is Chloe. I thought I'll just tell you a few things about my emojis, which I love. Just a few things like about my life after DT or fun facts. So one is I graduated in 2008, as Chloe said, which was coincidentally a few months after the iPhone had just been released, which means none of us had the skills to design for this new technology that just changed the world. It was also the year that the market crashed. Fun fact, I had started my new job like 3 days before that happened, but the lesson learned is that everything worked out fine. So if you graduate from DT, you can just persevere in adversity and chaos. There's no problem. The second thing is I've been working as a designer of play for about 10 years now, and depending on who you ask, it's either a dream job, if you ask me, or something I just made up because I'm unemployed. So, but it's a real job. I've been doing it for 10 years. And the third is just a fun fact. I was, like you guys, presenting my thesis 10 years ago, and I was so stressed out and so tired I almost fainted. It is true, but I made it through it. So you guys should feel proud to have made it thus far. And for the 3 people that are going to present after me, I'm here for you. If you feel overwhelmed, I can bring you a glass of water or martini. Just raise your hand. So let's talk about play. I thought I would talk a little bit about kind of my approach to play and education, and then just guide you through this pathway after DT, where I worked on some really interesting projects that actually changed a lot of my perception of how to design play for education. So starting by sharing 3 of my favorite things. The first one, if you don't recognize it, is a bouncy ball. It's an ancient bouncy ball. First invented by the Aztecs and the Mayans about 3,000 years ago. The second one is a nightclub designed by Studio 65, an Italian group of architects and designers in the 60s. And the third is one of my favorite pictures of the Women's March. And it's this 2-year-old kid that just wanted to participate and just drew up this poster. I just love these posters. I come from Greece, where when we go demonstrate, which is often, we just I don't know, throw things at the police, and all the posters at the Women's March was just so delightful and playful. I was really intrigued by them. So why am I sharing all these things? Just to say that these are all playful instances of objects or a nightclub or poster, but they actually are indicators of world-changing innovations. So, for example, the rubber ball was brought to Europe by Columbus, whatever, but the reason he kind of was intrigued by it because he saw a ball that was doing something he had never seen before. It bounced. So she was like, oh my God, I have to take this back home. And then fast forward, Goodyear, kind of used the same material to basically organize it and create tires. Nightclubs are also really interesting to me. Not just because I like going to them, but also because, this group, the Studio 65 group, really was interested in designing immersive experiences, combining space and sound and images. And that's a lot of people argue that was kind of a predecessor for, what today is VR and like immersive experiences and all that stuff. And then, I just love the posters, and I think, it's a worldwide movement. And, the fact that they're these playful posters to kind of start it all is just really interesting to me. So play is amazing. The playful mindset is by default exploratory. It helps us, understand the world around us, come up with new ideas. It's great. So let's talk about education. So if like me, you work in education, you find yourself in a party, like people ask you, what do you do for a living? And you say, I design educational toys or games. People just want to run away immediately. They have this face and it's like, no, why is this person talking to me? Why not the nightclub person? And there is a reason for that. Because, education is usually not fun. But, however, if you want to spin the conversation around, you ask people about their education. They always have a story, and they can talk about it for a long time. Because we all have, education is so transformative to us, whether it's our primary education or DT. We all have, we're really vested in it, and it's really just, important in our lives. But as I said, it's not a secret. Kids hate school, and there's a very obvious reason, because school is not fun. So that great thing is they can totally fix that. In fact, kids are just by default the most skilled people in playing. That's like their number one skill. Like they enter preschool and have a master's in play. They're just so good at it. So it just feels like, a natural way to approach education. And just also, I would say, as a designer of play, just a way for you to think of how to design for education, just being playful yourself. So, Life after DT, this is an invention one of the kids at Little Bits made, has felt a bit like that. So I just wanted to talk a little bit through some of the projects I worked in and things I have learned from them. So my first job out of DT was with the Institute of Play, and I was a game designer there. And the first project I had to work for was starting this new school in Manhattan. So disclaimer, I had planned no career in this field. My experience in game design was a game of very questionable quality I had made for Vic Fortuna's class and maybe one of Queen's class. And my experience with education was, guess what, I had gone to school. So that was it. So also, lesson learned, always apply for a job you're completely unqualified for. But it worked out, and it was just some of the most fun years of my life. And for those of you who do not know, Lesson Learn is a public school in New York. Its whole curriculum is based on the philosophy behind games and the elements of play. And just as an example, a lot of the things actually are not technological at Lesson Learn. They very much feel like, prototypes and things you could do with like paper and, building materials. But kids often take missions, so they go on missions for like the year, and they take on roles. Like in this mission we designed, they were code breakers in this fictional academy, and they had to solve these complicated math problems to just find out who did it. So it's a lot of role-playing, a lot of narrative games, but I want to talk about one game in particular I designed towards the end of my time there. It's called Caterpillar. It's a very simple board game, but it changed a lot of my thinking of what it means to design games for education. Caterpillar is a board game. So just as you can't see Caterpillar. Oh. Just back up a little bit. Every game at Quest is co-designed with a teacher. So you will see the teacher describing the game. So we worked with teachers like every day. They were also game designers. Caterpillar is a board game. It uses dice
and it uses colored blocks, and you can play it with either 2, 3, or 4 people. The goal is to create the longest caterpillar. But when you record the dice rolls, you are looking for something called the bomb. So the bomb is the most frequently rolled number, and as you play, you figure out the most frequently rolled number is what is the middle, so you have 5, 6, 7, and 8. And you try to build as much around it as possible so that you can get more blocks. But in the end, if that number blows, all of your caterpillar pieces go with it. So it's using skill, but it's also using chance.
And so nothing better than introducing in a classroom dice and a bomb as a game mechanic. It was just awesome. But it was like I would say one of the most successful games we designed. The kids really were into it. But what happened was one day I was walking in the hallway and I saw like these like caterpillar board games. You can see it's like nothing special. Like the kids had made like their own, like they had stuck together like 5 of them and they were just making this new game, and then they were using like 3 dices versus 2, and they were coming up with like a new like a zombie game. So it was really interesting to me. I had this moment where I realized that the best games for education are actually the ones that give agency to the kids to design their own game. And in fact, even personally, I'm a really visual designer and I'm very aesthetically driven. I think I'm a bit unfinished, a bit ugly, not like Comic Sans ugly, but like, you know what I mean, like a bit, just give them space for their imagination to kind of fill in the blanks. That is a model that I found was really, really, really impactful when it comes to getting kids engaged in their education. So I got really interested in this idea of working on creative tools for designing play versus like games themselves. Because games and toys are actually in fact very closed systems. They're beautiful systems, but they don't allow a lot of creativity. So I joined Mozilla, I think in 2012, and that was another kind of incredible job experience, much different than the small team at Quest to Learn. But at Mozilla, what I did, I spent most 2 years thinking about how to get kids into coding, developing basically a code editor that allowed kids to make like mini games and silly things like that. But also, on the other hand, it looked a lot like, you know, what is in one hand of the screen, but also look a lot like kids painting their own arcades and just doing things with their hands. And I learned 2 things from that experience, which was when it comes to teaching kids code, there are 2 things that actually make a big difference in engaging them more. One is humor, and the other one is friends. So that's not something maybe we talk a lot about, but kids have a crazy sense of humor that usually they only understand, especially like middle school or high school kids. And it's a great way to just make concepts like coding really not as intimidating. And the second one is friendship. Like that is even developmentally like a key milestone for children as they just grow up. Designing tools that allow you to connect with your friends is was just something that I realized was really important to them. So this is part of a project I worked on at Ivy during my residency there. I made this game editor that had a very simple game editor that made you make very silly games like with sushi characters or other stuff, like whatever. Like I made all these things that have no meaning, but it was just really fun. There were all these weird like little game challenges, like making a game out of poop. Like kids were really into that, and you had to make games with your friends, and they were all part of a playlist. So this is the final project I wanted to talk about is Little Bits, which I was there until recently, about 4 years. And I think, you know, when I joined Little Bits, it was all about the maker movement, and we were owning this word, make, make, make. And I think one of the key things that we kind of did at Little Bits after a while is switch from making to inventing. And that's an important kind of mindset switch. So what is Little Bits, if you guys don't know? It's a tech company here in New York Their platform of easy-to-use electronic building blocks that snap together with magnets, empowering kids to make inventions large and small. I've done a bunch of products there as a product designer. Most recently, collaboration with Disney, the Droid Adventure Kit that won the Creative of the Year. But I think my most proud moment was us really owning invention as a word and really celebrating that first moment when a child realizes they have invented something new, whether it's a silly toothbrush or an R2D2. So I just wanted to close with a little video about that. So yeah, we talked about necessity being the mother of invention. I think play is the mother of invention. And I'll give one thought, like, I encourage you to invent this world that we want to live in. What I saw today has been so inspiring, and I'm really looking forward to what that world will look like. So that's it for me.
You're the fastest to be set up.
Hi, I'm Taeyeon. My project is about connecting people in terms of play. My research began with the desire to make something fun, and the initial goal was designing a playground in a different way for little kids to enjoy, but it changed after I read some interesting article about an interesting phenomenon in Japan, which is most aged country in the world. It said children were kicked out from playgrounds because of aging. It was not really kicking them out, but they had some policies for the changed population, like replacing playgrounds as a space for the senior citizens and banning children to shout or run near the seniors' residential area. Also, playgrounds started to be recognized as a dangerous facilities for the reason of small accidents in some parts of society. However, when they started to reducing children's playgrounds, they realized that there were more accidents, and they started to finding the balance of being together. But that's the story of Japan, and of course I cannot generalize this because there's lots of variables to judge the situation. But the truth is, aging is a global issue, and we are all getting old, and the space we have is limited. That has been a critical reason for setting the aging as the primary keyword of my research. And what I wanted to say is that we can look at this issue in terms of play, which can bring individuals into the societies and which can relate the gap between generations. Because I believe that the play is the purest expression of pleasure in life.
So my questions were how to age well and how to play together. How can we share limited space in urban area? These three features are what people need to get aging well. A body in motion is better than one in front of the TV. And aging well means taking care of both the body and the mind, mental health, and staying in touch with family and friends and forming new relationships can keep people healthier and longer. This graph shows what seniors really do. It seems like they spend most of their time in front of TV and do less exercise. I went out to the park to see what they really do when they came out from the door. It's the observation at Pumpkin Square Park in his village. So he's dog walking, people watching, reading, eating, and bird watching. And when I went to the Columbus Park in Chinatown, it was so different from the first observation. They did playing card game, playing Chinese checker in a large group, playing Chinese checker in a small group, people watching and sitting on the bench. And after talking with some senior citizens at this park, I got several clues from them. So I'm going to share 3 features that I found during the journey of my research. The first one is for several field research and user tests, I could meet same people at the same time at the same place. They were generating small communities in their life. Fact 2 was I visited 4 different parks for observation. And the interesting thing was that what people do in the park was different because of the space itself and the cultural difference of its location. The senior citizens who I met outside wanted to be connected with other people, but that doesn't mean that they really want to communicate with young children. A 65-year-old aged man was not even happy to communicate with young adults like me. He wanted to communicate with people of similar age group, and when I asked about being connected with random kids, the answer was obviously no. And he did not want to break the routine that he had already been for a long time. Another 62-year-old man's answer was similar. And a 70-year-old woman said she is carrying her grandchildren regularly, but not sure about spending time with random kids. But one thing that I learned by experience is clear that they want to talk with someone. I talked with Patrick for 2 hours, an hour with Jimmy, even we just met in the park. So, life excursion module. This is my project, which is showing on 12th floor. It's named as LAM because of the shape of this structure reminds of Apollo lunar module, which is LAM. And this can also have the sense of independent flight, explorer, and being connected to others. LAM is a playable modular system for open space that bridges random people. Users can be creative, relaxed, and connected with this structure. Because it is reconstructible with detachable components and can be redesigned according to the environment and make conversation with tools. It generates communication, connection between people and bring healthier life. And this video shows how people are react to them in the park. So my questions at the length at 2.4 are components which will embody more senior citizens and the territory of next generation. Thank you.
So I'm Andrew, and so today I'm going to talk to you about educational methods in teaching programming as a form of expression. So two of the kind of like bigger concepts I want to tell you first is these two kind of approaches to teaching programming. One is called the procedure-first approach, and the other, which is a little more contemporary and emergent, is called the model-first approach. So the procedure-first starts with like the simplest part of a programming language or a tool, like just defining a variable, and works its way up to the more complex parts of language. But like one of the problems with trying to teach someone this way, and this is probably a convention a lot of people who have learned programming here are familiar with, is that like the progression from simple to complex is not the same as the progression from easy to hard. Because like teaching everything from simple to complex would be like trying to teach someone how to drive a car and starting with like, okay, so here's the chemistry of hydrocarbons, and then after a few weeks we'll work our way up to the steering wheel. And that's, I guess that's okay if you want to like learn to be an engineer or a mechanic, but like it's not as time efficient if you just want to like go to the mall to hang out with your friends or just like go buy groceries at the store. And then the model-first approach sort of takes the reverse position of starting from the end goal or the solution and kind of defining that problem space and modeling it and breaking it out into its components and its subcomponents until you get to an instructional level where you say, okay, I can translate all of these instructions and this description into something a computer could understand. And there's pretty good precedence for like more model-first educational resources these days, but I've noticed that like as topics get more advanced, everything starts skewing back towards like a more procedure-first approach. And this is like something that I ran into in like my journey of trying to like learn programming over the last 5 years. Like I hit this kind of like 2-year span of time where I just didn't feel like I was getting much better, and I didn't feel like there were a lot of like resources for like me as like a post-beginner, pre-intermediate learner. And so I've been, and this also kind of reflects on like the tools that are available to us. Because like there are some like nice open source tools out there, but like as you get more model first, everything starts to get much more closed source. And like the one word explanation for why that happens is just like capitalism. Like, because as tools become more model first, they need more people to maintain them, which means like you need to charge money for it. Or you need to find a more sort of like profit-driven model for sustaining your tool. And like there's also a gap there my projects that I've been doing, I've been trying to focus on like making more model-first tutorials and contributing to that space, specifically to like a post-beginner level of understanding and learning, and also using tools that give live feedback and interaction to give a quicker feedback loop to people who are learning. And so like last semester, I started trying to make like a book with like a model-first approach to like teaching Pong. And so I took like Pong, okay, we've got like our 3 elements, we've got a ball, we've got paddles, we've got a score, and like breaking it out into all of its like components and like subcomponents. Like one of the like problems with this, like people got really lost in my tutorials because it was like way too non-linear. They didn't really know where to start and stop. So this semester I've been trying to like hit a nicer like middle ground between like linear and non-linear with the new sort of like incarnation of my project, which so far has 3 tutorials. Each of them breaks out into something of like a story where like you're trying to solve a problem or add something to a project. And then all of the examples and sketches are live codable. So if I want to change something about like how the program works, I can just do that in real time and I can see what I'm changing as I change it. And so the 3 tutorials that I have so far kind of break out into these broad categories of like space, time, and form, which are just more friendly ways of saying like linear algebra, concurrency, and data architecture. And these are all like topics that like I saw like me as a learner like running into and not really understanding, as well as like students that I've tutored and taught like running into and not quite knowing even like how to ask a question of like what do I need to know about this. So I've also been testing like the tutorials I have so far, presenting them to students in the program who kind of identify in this like post-beginner, maybe pre-intermediate stage of learning creative coding, and asking them to like define like how they would try to solve like what the tutorial is getting to. So like in this example, I was asking Nancy how she might make a frame-independent animation, and so this was pretty common among a lot of the US. Like people would start from like, oh well, I'll just pseudocode something, or I'll directly try to start coding, but then they would kind of get stuck and they wouldn't quite know where like their 3rd or 4th step might be in the process. And then a few hours after going through the tutorial, they would have a much more systematic approach. Like, okay, this is the data I need to get. This is what I need to do with it, and this is like how I integrate it with the rest of what's going on. And I've also been lucky enough to get a lot of feedback from local artists and educators in the area, both like as like getting an account of like what roadblocks they've hit as educators trying to teach programming to artists, as well as like roadblocks that they hit themselves trying to learn creative coding. And so like 3 tutorials is not like a whole book make, so this is a project that I will be continuing to work on. And as it grows, I'm hoping that I can lean a little bit more back into a non-linear approach, giving like little asides that, that learners can explore on their own. For example, like probably LP tutorials are gonna talk about like how to transform a matrix. So why not make that its own module that can be linked to from different tutorials? And this takes a page out of Taeyeon Choi's book, The Poetic Computation Reader, which laterally breaks out all of its footnotes, so readers can just kind of explore topics as they're interested in them, and even like link out to other sites And going forward, as I said, this is like not a project that's really like 100% done. This is kind of like the foundation that I've tried to set up for myself going forward over the next year or so. Making more tutorials, maybe a year from now, bringing this to an arts residency, and then like maybe another year or so from that, taking what I learned from making these tutorials to kind of make another tool to contribute to this space that I showed you earlier, because like I feel like there could be a way to like very sustainably contribute a tool to like an open source model first space, and that's something I'd like to explore down the road. But right now, it's I've been focusing on just how to teach and take use my takeaways to inform that. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you.
Okay, here we go. Hi, I'm Roxanne Farkas, and I'll be presenting HealthAid for the last time this semester. So I started with HealthAid because I wanted to know why there are so many obstacles in delivering preventative health care to young adults, and how we might empower these young adults to be more proactive in managing their own health. Preventative health is super important because between the ages of 19 to 24 is when most preventable illnesses are contracted. So patient adherence, or the degree to which a patient correctly follows any medical advice, is critical to all healthcare initiatives. Lack of adherence is extremely costly due to severity of illness, cost of medication, and increased hospitalization rates. So I interviewed 28 users and I said, why don't you have access to healthcare? What's going on? And the three main reasons that I got back were location, so their doctor is too far away, insurance regulations. A lot of the people I interviewed only had health insurance in certain states or with a very limited number of providers, as well as schedule. Many doctors are only open 9 to 5, which are the same hours that a lot of students are in school or at work, and they can't afford to just take off in the middle of the day to go to the doctor. So currently these users are asking their parents and friends for advice, they're waiting for annual checkups, or they're checking into the ER just to receive basic care. So when I decided how I wanted to intervene, I first looked at the health impact pyramid. And essentially this pyramid rates interventions at the bottom as being ones that will hit the most members of the population, and interventions at the top will impact the least amount. Interventions at the top also have the most effort needed by the individual. And so HealthAid actually is situated at the top of the pyramid. And this is something I've had to justify all semester. But the target audience of HealthAid are young adults who do have insurance, and what they're missing is the counseling and education that was previously provided by their parents during this transition. I also looked at the stream of intervention, and HealthAid sort of fits in two phases. Prevention, because it teaches young adults what to do before something bad happens, as well as healthcare delivery, because it tells them when they need to go into the doctor and allow them to perform self-checks at home. So HealthAid combines guided self-exams, educational content, and scheduling into a software application with the goal of lowering the friction to preventative care. A focus on reminders and convenient self-checks helps young adults without regular access monitor their own health. The project intends to show users the value of preventative health care. role of health education obviously plays a really big role in preventative healthcare. So HealthAid provides education in the form of reminders and self-checks. This education is also meant to provide intrinsic motivation. When people understand why they're doing something, they generally want to do it when they see that it provides value to their lives. So explanations are provided for what each self-check is looking for and how frequently it should be completed. The dashboard contains a yearly checkup progress bar and also stores patient health information so that users can monitor their own health and more easily transition between healthcare professionals. Customized checks ensure relevancy for users, and notes and doctors' contacts help users consolidate their information. So reminders are something that I spent a lot of time researching this semester. We all know that when you get pop-up alerts on your phone, you immediately dismiss them. So reminders are in the form of email, and they provide valuable information instead of just being frustrating alarms. Reminders that provided value were more effective interventions than simple reminders at reducing non-attendance at appointments. So the self-checks are broken into step-by-step instructions so that they're easy to digest. Iconography helps users understand the instructions, and users can toggle back and forth between steps using the numbered progress bar at the top. So I tested 6 users in a 2-week clinical trial between the ages of 15 to 30. And they were asked to complete 2 self-checks, and then halfway through I sent them an email reminder for the functional prototype that basically just did the video show. So in order to measure my results, I did a health attitude survey both before and after. So I asked, how frequently do you think about your health? How often do you visit your doctor? What do you think is important? And how does having access to your health information make you feel? I then recorded how many users completed which self-checks both before and after the reminder email was sent, and sent them the same survey at the end with an additional question of how would you describe HealthAid. The most interesting result that I got was that users were less likely to want to visit their physician, but they cared more about their preventative health. So having access to their information made them feel empowered, and knowing how to perform self-checks at home made them feel like they didn't need to go in unless there was a problem, making preventative health more manageable for them. So HealthAid aims to fill in the gaps. It motivates users by educating them about their health while remaining non-threatening and non-patronizing. Again, this is really important because there's specialties for pediatrics and geriatrics, but HealthAid focuses on young adults who are a neglected demographic. Most wellness applications seek to intervene once a health issue has already arisen, but HealthAid aims to fill the gap of preventative care. And then rather than market a new device, HealthAid attempts to assist users with products already in their homes to remove financial barriers. Thanks.
Just to start with, I was blown away by all these 3 projects. They were all so thoughtfully designed and well finished, and I would encourage all of you to think about producing them as products. They were really, really well thought and designed. I was very impressed. So I wanted to start with a similar kind of word game like the previous facilitators, inspired by one of my favorite models of play, which is Play. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's a pedagogical, playful model out of China. And they use 5 words to describe their model. It's all about these playgrounds that look like adventure parks, basically. They say their model is about love, risk, joy, engagement, and reflection. And I wanted each one of you to choose one of these words and connect to, like, how does that, one of these words connects to your project. So they were love, risk, joy, engagement, and reflection. Who wants to start?
For me, I'm going to choose communication because I also use communication as a main topic of my thing. Because, so the communication is the most important thing, I guess, because the play and everything interaction is between people, person to person. So yeah.
I would have to say engagement. I think a lot of young adults, myself included, tend to not want to know about their health because it's scary, and if you ignore it, it's not really there. So I think getting users to engage with their health is the most important beginner step, and that's what my project is really aiming to accomplish.
I think the word would be reflection. Like as I said in the presentation, part of this was inspired by like the difficulties I had learning programming and just noticing a lot of other people running into the same roadblocks and realizing like, oh, it's not just me, like other people have this problem. I wanted to help other people not have to do what I had, or go through what I had to learn programming.
So I'm going to ask actually an individual question just about your project, each one of you, and we can like have a conversation about all the projects. But so I wanted to start with you, and I really loved how thoughtful your project was, and also I appreciate the real gap that exists between, especially like tools that are designed for beginner. And like helping users go from beginner level coding to intermediate. That's a real gap, and I think you have developed something really valuable. So I wanted to ask you, like, how do you design for that first experience? So like when a lot of beginner tools have awesome kind of onboarding experiences and they make users feel very confident with the tools. Like, how do you design that first experience for more intermediate, like teaching you how to code product?
So a lot of it was led by questions that I received like through my experience tutoring students and like being a boot camp instructor. Very often I would get questions that like would tell me that like the students were really thinking about the content, but like the answers I had to give them would just go way beyond the scope of the class. So partly it was also a response to like I want to give something to point to for like students in the future who asks like those really critical questions about like object-oriented programming or like the finer points of more advanced concepts. So a lot of the content that I've made is based on those questions and this.
Maybe you guys can hear me. Anyway, so I really appreciate that answer, and I love the like leading with a question approach. I wanted to ask you about your project. So it's a really, I can see how it's a really impactful product, and what I really loved about it is when you mentioned the intrinsic motivation. It is true, like having a good health is something that we all are interested in. But if you're, as you said, a young adult, you probably are really healthy. So maybe you're like less interested in it. So I was just wondering, like, how does your solution, your product, really highlight that intrinsic motivation for users, and how do you make that as delightful as maybe the other apps and experiences they have, every day, like on their phones and so forth?
Yeah, so I really tried to make the educational aspect fun. If you were to sit through and like read the way that things are explained, it's meant to be fun and not intimidating. And also I think just, a lot of color, a lot of iconography, so it doesn't feel like you're sitting down and reading a biology textbook. But I do believe that even though most young adults are hopefully very healthy, if they understand the choices that they're making are going to severely impact them later on, I think that they will care. But I think that they don't have access to that information in a digestible way.
I really loved the audience for your product, and I think when we come, let's go next to each other. When we talk about play, we usually talk about children play, right? And like there's this whole demographic of older people that are also quite playful. It's not that you stop being playful when you get older. In fact, it reminded me a lot of the Ministry of Loneliness in the UK. It's a ministry that is especially founded to tackle loneliness in older people. And so I was just wondering if you've explored the different play patterns that occur with your product and this older kind of use cases. Like, how do people play when they're older? Is it like a slower type of play? Yeah, just curious.
So that's why I made my product, and it's not product, my project as modular. So because it's more like system than structure. So it's modular, and as I said, main topic of that is like communication and making conversation with others. So yeah, so
Play with something that maybe in their head is designed for children, or like they're not used to it, participating in that experience. How do you get them to do it?
when I get out to the park and then I talk with some senior citizens, they already wanted to do some like that creative exercise, like activities with the structure as well. So I think, yeah, senior citizens is not, it's also like us and also like kids. That's what I think.
So I wanted to ask, well, we already did a lot of user testing, which is great. I wanted to ask you whether what was kind of the most surprising thing you discovered through user testing that you did not expect, and how did that influence your design further?
Yeah, so again, through user testing, it was also a very question-based iteration approach. Not so much my questions, but questions people would have of like the content that I've written or the tutorial that I would give them, and when they would ask a question, I'm like, oh, I didn't cover that. I should go back and add something to there, add an illustration, or maybe like just restructure the tutorial entirely based on the questions I get, and knowing which information to introduce first and later.
I would say the most surprising thing for me was the realization that users were less inclined to see their doctors after using my application. And at first I thought that I had really failed. And then I realized, in a way, I had succeeded because these users weren't going to the doctor anyway. And now at least they were able to determine if it was actually necessary. So I took some time to add in a little bit more information about when it really is important to go to the doctor and where the limitations of the application are, and make those known to the user so that there was less of a chance of someone feeling like, okay, I don't need my yearly skin checkup because I did it myself. So really I'm setting, this is not a replacement, this is to, tide you over sort of a thing.
The most important thing I learned from user test was it was so different from my ideal world and the real world. So what I learned from that was I really need to go out before make something. That's what I learned.
It's hard to do when you're making something physical.
Yeah.
I don't know how we are on time.
We can take questions from the audience.
Yeah, you guys have questions? Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I had one for Roxy. I was just thinking about becoming like engaged with one's own health. I've had personal experiences with doctors who was like scandalously misinformed about the basics of how medicine works, and actually like actively discouraged me from educating myself about my own health, like as if I couldn't handle it. So I was wondering if there's a way to sort of like better engage the doctors, or if you address that in your research at all, or kind of educate them about their own patients. Yeah, I feel like that divide, that can also discourage people from going to the doctor because you're often, depending on who the doctor is, sometimes treated in a not so nice way.
Yeah, that is something that I heard a lot when I was interviewing users, and that was one of the reasons why I hoped that having another place to turn to for information would be beneficial to users that have experienced something like this. HealthAid is meant to be user-facing in the sense that it's not targeting physicians and it's not really geared toward them, but I do think should I actually, really create this application, that would be an interesting perspective to look at it through.
I have a follow-up question, actually. It's a really interesting point. I feel as though people often don't know what questions to ask
Right.
their doctor, what information they might be looking for. Like, I wonder if you thought about that.
Yeah, so at the start of each health check in HealthAid, there's a section called What's Going On, and it says, okay, first of all, what is a self-check for skin? What are you even looking for? What are the different types of issues that you might find? And there's a little form when they're making an appointment that says questions to ask your doctor, where they can put in anything that they're feeling or thinking at the time, because something that I've noticed, even with myself, is I have all these things I need to ask, and you get in there, they have 5 minutes, and then I forget to ask, or I don't ask the question in the way that I meant to, and I get a different answer. So.
I have a final
Yes.
one. But just to like get you thinking for your next steps, maybe. So, do you have, have you thought about like a similar business or like a way you would pursue this as a business model or as a company? Like, what does that pathway look like for your project? Screen Go for it.
So if I start a company with this project, the first thing I need to do is finding like occupational therapists, like who are working with senior citizens, because during my research and user test, I thought I really don't know about how seniors doing their activities and how they live their life. So what I'm thinking is forming a really nice team is the first one.
I think that HealthAid is a pretty viable product, but I think ultimately it needs a way, to make money. And I don't know if that's connecting with physicians or with insurance companies, but I think that would be sort of the next step, is how can it be more of a connected platform to other aspects of the healthcare system.
Have you seen Maven? You have an interesting business model.
Yeah, so as a resource that wants to stay open source, I think the sort of the book I'm writing would need to kind of find its community first. So most likely the avenue of being sustainable would be through something like crowdfunding, through Drip or Patreon, to sort of on nights and weekends writing tutorials.
I have a book recommendation, and I think I mentioned it, but I would strongly encourage everybody who graduates to read it. It's called Business Model Generator. It's a really awesome kind of workbook. It's different business. No, I'm serious. This is a thing that there's a skill after DT. Just like segueing the next topic. Yeah, thank you so much. This was amazing and really impressive, and I can't wait to see all these companies in 10 years. You guys will hire me.
Is this on? Yeah. Okay. So this last session is a formal originally planned, but hopefully fun moment to close out the symposium. So I'm going to actually ask those who were here, so Salome and Drew and Chloe, come on up to the front for a second. We have other alumni who've been out of the program for more than one day. I think we have Dave Carroll. Yeah, I think we got Dave Carroll. So Dave, could you come up too? Everybody's got a seat. Yeah. This is, for those of you who stuck through the day and have made it to this final session, the boss level, as we might call it, you have a special treat here because what I'm going to do is ask each one of you to answer one question, and that is, what is the most important survival skill, the most important or perhaps most important thing to do to survive life after DT? I don't know if you can remember back when you were at this point and you were graduating and about to step off into the unknown, the most frightening thing of all, life after DT. What is that one thing, if you look back on that moment and where you are now, that you think is going to be useful advice to this new group of alumni? Who'd like to go first? Yeah, let's go with seniority. Let's go with seniority. Dave, you're class of 2000. Oh my God. Amazing. And the computers all didn't stop working either.
I know.
Cool.
Yes. So yeah, I've spent half my life at this school too, because when I joined the program, it was 1998, so I'm in my 20th year here. So the main advice I would give to newly minted alums is actually your risk-taking will lead to unexpected results. And so therefore, evaluating the risks seems like it's a objective activity, but it's actually quite unpredictable. What things you'll do in your life will reverberate through the rest. So when taking risks, try to actually be irrational, because you can't predict what one thing will lead to the next.
So try to be irrational, not rational, irrational.
Be irrational.
One of the biggest things that I think you get out of the DT program are your classmates. And so it's something that really probably won't take much work, but it definitely is valuable, is staying friends with the people that you've made friends with over the last 2 years. A lot of like the professional development that I've seen people do post DT have been through DT contacts, and whenever I'm trying to like figure out what's the next thing to me, it's taking Ambrine or Alia out for drinks and asking them like, how do I do this thing? Like, help me think through this. So I would say stay connected to people and don't be afraid to ask those people for help, even when you aren't all sitting on D12 trying to figure out a coding problem. It can be life stuff too.
Nice.
Seconding the friendship part, it is true. Like, I have worked with DT alumni, so I have hired them, they have hired me. Like, when I am in this crossroads of what is life, I go to them, or even to my teachers. But I would say skill. I would say persistence, if that makes sense. So, when you graduate from this program and you have a dream maybe of the career you want to have, and it's probable that you will get a lot of obstacles in the way, and it won't be easy because nothing in life is. So just having persistence and believing in yourself, believing in your vision, it will eventually happen. Like, there is no question about it. So put that in a post-it and just like remind yourself.
I think knowing that you have a unique and a very untraditional
skill set and knowledge that you've been developing while being at Parsons. I know early jobs right out of school, I was asking questions that felt really safe to ask here, but felt really weird in other places. People will make faces at you, and that's okay. Because you have one foot in arts and design world and another foot in a tech development, space. And so you see things from two sides of a coin. And so push forward with the questions you're asking.
All right, so be irrational when taking risks. But take risks, right? Yeah. Yeah. Friends, stay connected. Persist. Yeah, persistence. That's like the secret ingredient, right? Because it's going to be hard, but if you keep trying, you'll get there. And it's okay to be weird and unique. Have one foot here, one foot there, right? All right. And I'm not an alum of the program, although I have, like Dave spent half my life here at Parsons. I will just say, know that you always have a home, that this is a place for you, that we are your friends. Come say hi, let us know what you're up to, and we're all here in it together, this crazy world, and we're here to make it better. So thank you all for the amazing stuff. And thank you to Tuda and to Kabir and to Howard for sharing, everyone from we got a little bit of time. You can take a nap and then go to the party upstairs, which will officially kick off at 7, but also the show is up there. So, we can just migrate up and be first at the table with the finalists. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our alumni.